Okay. Do I have a pre-show?
You do.
I do. No, that's for next week.
No, you have one for this week.
There we go. Remember to have Daniel turn down headphone volume, and you did.
Well, I think we got that part.
Okay, got that. Recap on 10K time. That was a really long time ago.
It was a long time ago. I don't know why we're only just now talking about it.
I don't think we recapped on it.
Oh.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Is that whenever I was preparing these notes, I was listening back to a previous episode, and I was talking about how I wanted to run a sub 60 10K, and I had the race coming up, and now it's been basically a month since that happened.
And everyone definitely thinks you did not succeed at that goal, and that's why you haven't mentioned it since then.
That's probably what they think.
Mm-hmm.
And you gave me a real stinking hard time about how I'm not faster than you, or was not faster than you used to be. And I ran like a 58-minute 10K.
Finally made it.
Broke 60 minutes and proved that I, in my current state, am faster than you 7
or 8 years
ago.
Yeah.
It was 2017.
Yep.
It's 2025.
Yep.
So I'm faster than you 8 years ago.
Well, I'm glad you finally have surpassed that. Good job.
Thank you. Glad to hear you admit it. All right.
It's a real tortoise and the hare situation here, since I haven't, trained or run since then.
That's true, right? You haven't ran since then. You finished that race and you're like, I'm done.
Pretty much, yeah. What happened was I intended to keep up with it, but I guess I hurt myself or something while I was running that race. I got shin splints or something. And so I took 2 months off, and then I took 8 years off.
Proceeded to take additionally.
Whoa. I don't think you could beat my time in your current condition. Welcome back to the Camera Gear Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Lucas.
And we're here today to talk about the gear, software, and techniques we use to shoot photos and video.
I would just be hacking on the side of the road. Maybe it would make...
Which kind of hacking do you mean?
Both. Maybe. Oh, man. I'm not going to be able to laugh during this episode, or else I'm just going to start coughing like a fiend. Just ride that mute button, Daniel, every time you start hearing me wheezing. Anyway... It's nearly May, which means we're going to take a week off.
Yep, that's true. As we do every May.
Yeah, basically.
I think that's
almost every May.
I think that's kind of
we
the
took
case.
a week off last May.
Yeah, we did.
Left the country.
Yeah.
We're going to take a week off this May.
Leaving the country.
And leave the country.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, so that'll be lots of fun, and everyone's just going to probably feel really sad about not having all this good camera news in their feed for not news. I don't really do news, camera content.
Yep. I think we're going to have some good stuff when we come back, though.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
There's going to be some photography happening. There's going to be some camera stores happening.
I hope there's at least one camera store happening.
I'm pretty sure there will be.
I've already been browsing used cameras on Japanese camera store websites.
Yep. Well, because you booked the hotel for the first night of this trip. And it seems like just a complete coincidence that the hotel you booked is 600 meters away from the largest camera store in Japan. I don't really know.
I think their website said at least Tokyo. It's 5 stories tall.
Yeah, that's quite the coincidence. Sometimes it just happens, I guess. Right?
Yeah. Oh, whoops. Look what happened by accident.
Yep.
I think we're just gonna have a good time. I mean, I might buy an RX-1R Mark II.
Anything is possible. Because what can make Sony menus worse than also being Japanese? Man,
yes,
I'm gonna have to be doing a lot of muting on this episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Okay. Jeez, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be drinking hot tea. It's just loosening up everything.
I don't think that's helping.
Maybe I should switch to this sparkling water.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna help either. We'll see.
All right, cool. I'll just stop drinking anything. Whatever. People have to listen to my dry voice. They're usually listening to my wet voice.
Whatever that means.
Well lubricated vocal pipes.
Okay.
Anyway, taking a week off. So no show next week.
Yep. We'll be back in full force after that.
Probably.
maybe.
Yeah, like 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already started putting together that next show, and we're going to talk about. Have you seen this? The new Sony 50-150 f2.
I did see that.
Holy cow!
Pretty cool.
Not even talking about that today.
Yeah,
next time. Are going to talk about instead a lens that came out in December that's been on my list for a really freaking long time.
Like you said, we don't do news.
We don't do news around here. This is the $1,100 16 to 28 f2.8 Canon lens.
Pretty good price to spec ratio there.
It's Canon RF. So we talked quite a bit in recent episodes about. It comes up every so often when we talk about Nikon cameras. Hint, Nikon camera we're talking about today. And Nikon has these lighter, smaller, cheaper 2.8 zooms.
Yeah.
And so instead of getting a 70 to 200, you can get a 70 to 180 or a 28 to 70 f2.8 instead of a 24 to 70. And they manage that by giving you the whole range. Like you can go out and buy a Nikon 17 to 28, 28 to 70, and 70 to 180. And sure, like you're not going to like 14 or 16 on the wide end. You're not going to 200 on the long end. But all these lenses are maybe a half a pound compared to the was like the gold ring version, the S-line lenses. Are they all S-line lenses? Whatever. They're cheaper than those, and they're lighter, and it's kind of a cool deal.
Yeah, you pick your trade-offs.
And so Canon has been slowly getting to that point as well. Canon also has a 28 to 70 f2.8 that's remarkably cheaper than the L series 24 to 70 that probably cost $3,000. I forget, $2,500. And this last December, they released like the next one. So, and they even say on the website, this pairs perfectly with our 28 to 70, and it's this 16 to 28.
Cool.
Yeah. So hopefully what that means is sometime later this year, early next year, we'll get the final part of the Trinity, maybe a 70 to 180 or something.
Yeah. Seems like they would do that.
Yeah, it does. And it also seems like they're trying to beat Nikon at their game here because this lens is kind of better in all the ways.
Okay.
So it's a small compact, it's external zoom, cool. It is 1 millimeter wider, 16 to 28 instead of 17 to 28 compared to the Nikon.
Which is, I mean, at the wide end, that starts to become significant. Like you might notice 16 versus 17.
Probably. I don't know the weight and the minimum focus off the Nikon offhand, but this one's like 8 inches minimum focus. And it's like 445 grams.
Yeah, so about
1 pound's pretty light. It's got 67 millimeter filter thread. It has lens stabilization. You get like 5.5 stops of stabilization.
Oh wow, that's kind of unusual for a wide angle zoom.
Yeah, the Nikon doesn't even have stabilization. I wrote IBIS in my notes, which is the wrong thing.
Yeah,
but either way, the Nikon doesn't even have IS. It's cheaper. It's like $100 cheaper or something.
Wow. So there's like no downside here.
Yeah, it's just better. I mean, that's what you get for shooting, sticking it out with Canon for this long. Is finally here's a lens that outpaces that that Nikon. I don't know which one's optically better. I didn't compare like test charts or anything. I just thought this was kind of cool because we give Canon such a hard time about how expensive their lenses are. And here is one step closer to having a trinity of affordable but fast zooms.
If I was on Canon and needed a wide angle zoom, I mean, this seems right in line with what I would be looking for. Like price and spec wise seems pretty ideal.
I like it. That's all. I thought it was good. Yeah. I wanted to draw some light to it. I think that these are the kind of things that I like to see out of Canon.
Yeah, I think so too. It's great.
Okay. Now for the real deal here, Daniel.
Get into the meat.
Z5 Mark II.
Yep, this one made a splash when it came out.
Did it?
I thought so. It seemed like a lot of reviews.
This came out right before NAB, right?
Yeah, it seemed like there were a lot of reviews, and I think it kind of caught people's eye just from being sort of not exactly a successor to the Z5. Like it kind of feels like this goes into a different category than the Z5.
It does a little bit. So the Z5 original was kind of their EOS RP competitor, where it was what is the cheapest full frame camera that we can make. And there was a lot of corner cutting, had like one SD card slot, stuff like that. It was very cheap, but it was a full frame camera. And what they've done here with the Z5 Mark II is brought it up market and made it almost what I was expecting the Z6 Mark III to be.
Interesting.
Whenever the Canon, geez, blah, blah, blah. Whenever the Nikon ZF came out, that retro style full frame version of the ZFC, that came out, late 2023, I think. So it's been out about a year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That came out, and our prediction was, this is basically a Z6 Mark III. They just, whatever. And then they came out with the Z6 Mark III, and it was amazing with this half stack sensor, and it's better than that camera. And so what they've done here is they've taken the ZF and repackaged it into almost like a Z6 III body. It is very similar to the Z6 III body, but same specs as ZF, Z6 III body, DSLR style, slightly cheaper. And now this is in that $1,500 to $2,000 full frame market.
Yeah.
Where sure, maybe it's $400 or so, $500 more than the previous version. But I think that you're getting a lot more for it, and getting into, if you just need a good quote unquote entry level full frame camera that can check most of the boxes for pro-ish work. There it is.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's a pretty popular area to compete in, I guess, because Panasonic has the S5 Mark II and the S9 kind of in that same area.
Yeah.
Canon has it's the R8.
The R8, that's right.
That. And then, Sony has some stuff, I think, that's around there too. Don't they?
Like an A7 III.
Okay. Not like
a 7
not
year
like
old.
an A7C.
Okay, yeah, they do have an A7C. Yeah,
So
that's true.
A couple of options over there.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there's quite a few full frame options in the $1,500 to $2,000 category.
Yeah,
and
it makes sense for them to have a camera competing in that. In that range.
I often forget about that. I think that of there's the R8 and the S5 II, and that's it. But it's no, there's those, and sometimes the A7 IV dips into that price range. Now you have the Z5 II. The ZF is $2,000. That kind of counts. And the A7C II, I frequently forget about. There's quite a few cameras that fall into this bucket.
Yeah.
So, there's a few things maybe to talk about on the top end, but let's just loop back to those. I have a bit of a game here. Okay. I've made a Excel list that you can't see, and I have 4 cameras in this list, and I have a list of features that I feel like maybe you would care about.
Okay.
And I'm going to suggest a feature, and then I want you to tell me which of these cameras has that feature or is the best in that category.
Okay. That sounds interesting.
And whenever we get to the bottom of it, you'll tell me which of these 4 cameras is the best camera for $1,500 to $2,000.
Interesting. You're hoping the answer is the Fuji.
I don't know, just based upon these criteria. Actually, the Fuji isn't even on this list.
It sure is.
X-T5 might fall in that category, but it's not full frame.
Okay.
So I didn't include the A7C, 2C, 2C.
Because you forgot that it existed.
Because I forgot it existed.
Yeah. So what cameras do we have on this list?
Okay, I included a Z5 II, the Nikon Z5 II, brand new camera. You may have heard of it. The Sony A7 IV, maybe up market a little bit.
Yeah, maybe.
Kind of old though. I don't know. The Lumix S5 II, your favorite camera, of course, and then the Canon R8.
Reasonable. Some solid choices there.
Yep. Okay. So, which of these 4 cameras would you pick for using 4K 60? Particularly, does any of them shoot 4K 60 without a crop?
Well, I know the S5 doesn't. I think that one crops in. It's a good question. Does the Sony? I'm going to guess out of all these, the Sony is the only one that could potentially shoot it uncropped.
That is incorrect. All of these cameras shoot at a 1.5x crop, which is an APS-C crop. Unless it's Canon, then it's a 1.6 crop.
Yeah.
But in this case, the R8, uncropped 4K 60.
Interesting. Okay.
Oversampled from the 6K sensor.
I forgot about
4K 60 because it has the same sensor as the R6 Mark II.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, watch out.
It's pretty meaningful because the 1.5 crop is pretty painful.
It's a little bit because you're cropping down to that 1x1. It's maybe a little less useful.
Yep. Noisier, and whatever lens you're using is going to behave differently.
So it would seem that maybe if you needed 4K 60, the currently priced on sale at $1,300, which I probably shouldn't have told you that, is the Canon R8.
And you can get that 16-28 lens we just talked about.
There you go.
It's
Easy
great
peasy.
Setup. Yeah.
And that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good setup. I mean, you're less than $2,500. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking about that now.
All right, what's next?
Okay, which of these can shoot open gate? It's 3x2.
I mean, kind of thinking maybe it's the same set, but actually I know the S5 can. So I think I'm going to say the S5 and the Z5 Mark II.
Unfortunately, the Z5 Mark II, for some ridiculous reason, doesn't support open gate recording. You only the S5 II of this list. If you need that 3x2, you're going to sacrifice that 4K 60.
It's definitely a Panasonic thing.
Yeah,
like they're really into those modes and anamorphic and all that.
I thought you could shoot open gate on the Z8 and the Z6 Mark III.
Maybe you can.
Might be a speed issue with this sensor.
Yeah, because the processor on the camera is fast enough, but
yeah, in fact, the processor in the Z5 is the same processor as the Z9 and the Z8.
Yeah, so that's not the problem.
They took their highest end processor and put it in this camera, which means it gets all the autofocus modes, Daniel.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
I wonder if that saved them money, you know, like you just order more of the same chip or something.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right. Which of these cameras would you pick if you needed to shoot oversampled 4K?
Well, you've given that one away. I think that would be the R8.
It's true, because that one can shoot for oversampled 4K up to 60 frames per second, whereas all the other ones can shoot 4K up to 30 frames per second oversampled.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know which one does it better.
Yeah.
Probably the Z5 II.
I don't know. Do people really compare like how the oversampled 4K compares?
I mean, that's like the go-to mode.
I get
most of these cameras nowadays, you get worse results in 1080p because it just drops into a line skip, or it won't oversample down to 1080, or it will line skip to 2K and then oversample.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
Yeah, it's like it used to be like 1080p was basically the only thing that you could shoot, and now I honestly, with a modern camera, I wouldn't shoot 1080p.
Yeah, like, even if you want to save space, like shooting 4K at a low bit rate or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's just you're just going to get a better image because you're oversampling that sensor. It's kind of like the new thing in technology. It's just funny to me.
It's the new thing in technology.
It's the hot new thing.
All
right, maybe you need to shoot RAW.
Yeah,
but you don't got a Ninja.
That's a problem.
Can any of these shoot internal RAW?
I'm gonna guess no on that.
You'd be wrong.
I'd be wrong, huh?
The Z6.
That's not even on this list.
Oh no! The Z5 II. You can shoot NRAW internal 12-bit.
That's unusual for a camera in that price range.
They own Red, so they can just put compressed RAW on whatever they want.
I guess so.
One should not shoot NRAW on the Z5 II.
Is there a specific reason for that, or are you just saying that if you're doing a RAW workflow, like maybe spend more on your camera?
So Nikon's doing something here. And if you shoot, it's not just straight data off the sensor. Because of the read speed of the sensor, you can't get the full 1:1 pixel in RAW. If you shoot in a cropped mode, like 4K 60 or something, and you're shooting 1:1 at that 1.5 DX crop, which is the Nikon's term for APS-C, then the RAW looks fine. If you shoot in the highest resolution and RAW that you can get, it's 4K, but it's full width of the sensor. Now, Lucas, how's that possible, you might say? Well, I would ask Nikon the same question. How are you getting 4K off a 6K sensor in RAW? They're doing something goofy, and it involves some amount of like line skipping, which makes the image soft and less flexible.
It just makes you think, like, why bother adding the feature if you're going to compromise it?
So exactly, like if you shoot in N-Log in oversampled 4K 60 to HEVC or whatever, the image, when exposed similarly, looks substantially better. If you need to be able to adjust white balance in post, the RAW workflow makes sense. But if you're going to shoot RAW on this camera, you might as well record externally to RAW. But then you're getting like ProRes RAW. You're not getting NRAW. So that's kind of like maybe a problem there. The internal RAW feels like it was checking a box on this camera.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like a marketing bullet point.
And it's just not very good.
Yeah.
Like you kind of don't get any extra dynamic range out of it. you get worse sharpness, and like the only real thing is maybe you can adjust the white balance in post.
Interesting. Weird choice.
Yeah, weird choice. So I don't know there. I mean, I would just record RAW to an SSD with the S5 IIX.
Yeah, why not? Let's do that.
Why not? Why not indeed? Okay, let's talk about memory cards. Do any of these puppies have a CF Express?
I thought you were about to say, do any of these cameras have a memory card? Yes, Lucas. All of them do.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Z5 II, only internal memory.
Yeah, like the Sigma BF.
Yep.
Which is also in this price range.
Yeah. Forgot about that one too.
Let's see. Do any of them have CF Express? I don't think they do.
That is accurate.
Does the A7 IV have CF Express Type A?
Actually, it does. Yes, it has the dual slots.
Mm-hmm. But it's Type A, not Type B.
Correct. Which of these would you pick if you needed, maybe a more professional workflow and you need 2 card slots? Other, like obviously the A7 IV, which we mentioned, duals.
Yep.
But would any of these other ones have dual card slots? Maybe UHS 2?
I don't think the R8 does. The S5 II, I believe, does have 2 card slots, but I don't know if they're UHS 2. I'm guessing the Nikon probably only has 1. That's my guess. I think the S5 II would be the only other one that would have 2 card slots.
It actually does have 2, Daniel. The Z5 II, dual card slots.
Is that what the 2 stands for?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's in the press material. They said, we're bumping this up to 2 slots, therefore it's a 2. They're UHS 2, and there's 2 of them.
Wow. I mean, imagine when they get to a Mark III.
Watch out.
First camera, 3 card slots.
That'll be CF Express Type B 3.0, and then we'll be mad because it's still not 4.0.
Yeah. That's how they get you.
Okay.
Is the S5 the only other one that has that?
Yeah, it's got dual slots.
Yeah.
It's really just the R8 where if you need dual slots, that kind of knocks it out.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because, the R8's the only one that's doing oversampled 4K 60, but you don't get open gate. Well, and you only have 1 card slot.
That's the way this stuff goes. I mean, that's how it is with every camera. There's always trade-offs, and you can't get the one camera that has everything unless it's a Fuji X-H2S.
Or, you're right, because I was going to say Z5 Mark II, but not quite there.
Yeah.
Just the X-H2S is the only one, unless you need full frame. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. Which one of these do you suppose has the lowest rolling shutter?
Ooh.
Like if motion was important, Daniel, which one of these would you pick?
That is tough. I'm going to guess the Z5 Mark II.
I would probably pick that one, but honestly, the Z5 Mark II and the S5 II are pretty much the same. 21, 22.
Yeah, I was going to say, as soon as you said they were the same, I was going to say it must not be that impressive because I don't think the S5 II is great on rolling shutter. I think it's okay, but it's not great.
I think this is probably a good time to tell you that the Z5 II has the Sony IMX410 sensor in it.
That's pretty common sensor, right?
Yeah, that was in the Nikon Z6, the ZF, the Sony A7 III, the Panasonic S5 II, the Panasonic S1, the Nikon Z6 Mark II.
Yeah, that sensor has been around a few times.
It's been around. It's just the A7 III sensor that's in everything.
I mean, it kind of makes sense with, like in terms of price and all that. Like, you got to cut corners somewhere.
It's old. It's an old sensor.
You mentioned though that you said the A7 III sensor. Yeah. So I know the A7 III was 8-bit, and some of the other cameras you mentioned do not have that same limitation. So I mean,
different versions. Yeah. And then different processing. The processor
this does do 10-bit color. It's just that same old sensor.
It does do 10-bit color. The processing is just really kind of a pipeline thing with the sensor, and it's really helped give a little more life to the sensor. But things like a 22 millisecond read speed, and only be able to shoot in cropped 4K 60 is kind of like that. Sorry, that's just this sensor.
So which of these cameras is the best on the rolling shutter?
It's probably going to be the R8. I couldn't find any official numbers, but it seems in the 15 millisecond range.
Interesting. I guess it kind of fits with the uncropped 4K 60. It must be reading pretty fast off that sensor.
The R8's just the fastest puppy here.
Yeah, apparently.
All right. Well, maybe you're budget conscious, Daniel. Which of these would you choose if you had to buy the cheapest one?
If I had to buy the cheapest one, well, I'm gonna say not the Z5, because especially if I was looking for a used one, I wouldn't be able to find a used one of that, and it's not gonna be on sale either. So I know you can get the S5 II sometimes on sale for like $1,300 to $1,500. I guess probably closer to $1,500 used for like $1,300. I'm betting the R8 is similar. I'm betting the A7 IV is similar. So I think it'd be tied between like the S5 II and the R8.
Yeah, it's definitely the R8. The R8's $1,500, I believe, MSRP, and right now, when I checked, it was on sale for like $1,300.
So that's the lowest MSRP of the group then. Yeah, I think the S5 II is a little bit higher than that MSRP.
In this class, the R8 is the budget camera.
Interesting.
They just put a really good sensor in it.
Yeah, I mean, so far in the things you've mentioned, the R8 has come out on top on almost all of them.
Yeah, quite a bit, except for that internal RAW.
Yeah,
and the dual card slots.
Yeah.
The S5 II, I think, was like $1,800 for the non-X version. The X version was $2,000. Last I checked, it was like $1,600.
Yeah,
new.
Sometimes they go on sale. Yeah.
The Z5 II is launching at $1,700.
Yeah.
That's a really competitive price.
I think it is competitive, because they're going to go on sale eventually. And it's a good place to be starting.
It's certainly going to be probably a $1,500 camera when it's on sale, which this is a lot of camera for $1,500. The A7 IV is, I think when it launched, it was $2,200 or $2,500. It's more of a camera that competes with the R6 Mark II and the Z6 Mark III. The A7 IV, I think, is about $2,000 right now. So substantially more expensive than most of these other cameras that we're talking about, and kind of not better at anything.
Yeah. Well, it's like the A7 IV, was a little bit, it came out before some of these other ones, and maybe it just hasn't kept up in terms of price reductions.
Yeah, for sure. And, thinking about all these other cameras and the A7 III sensor, I feel like, does the next version of all of these have the same sensor that's in the A7 IV?
It definitely seems possible. I think that Sony probably, picks a sensor they're going to use for that camera. They sell a lot of those A7 series cameras, and so they make a lot of them, and then they probably discount it eventually, like once it's not the newest thing. And so you end up seeing the sensor in like all of these cheaper cameras.
It's funny to think that sensor is going to become ubiquitous, which leads me to my next question. If you really needed 24 megapixels, that's not the good question. That's a terrible question. If you wanted the highest megapixel, just forget everything I said. If you want the highest megapixel backside illuminated sensor of this bunch, which one are you going to get?
Highest megapixel. I think I'm betting it's the R8.
Actually, they're all 24 except for the A7 IV. The A7 IV is 30.
Oh, okay. Okay. So the A7 IV finally wanted something.
Yeah, which means that the Z5 Mark III is going to be 30 megapixels.
Yeah, probably so.
Yep.
Most likely.
All right. What if autofocus is really important to you? Like, just super important. I can't really, I'm not going to go down the road of saying, which one of these is best as autofocus. It's probably a toss-up between the Sony and the Canon, but, the Z5 II is pretty good. But maybe you mostly care about the number of focus points.
Well, you gave something away where you said that the Z5 Mark II is the same processor as the Z9 and got a lot of its autofocus features. So I'm betting that's pretty competitive. But I feel, and I haven't used Sony autofocus much, but I just hear so many people talk about it. I still feel like maybe the A7 IV is the best all-around autofocus performance.
Probably. Who knows? Which one of these do you think has the most autofocus points?
I'm guessing the Z5 Mark II.
According to the specs that I found, it was $299, which is half of that of the A7 IV and the S5 Mark II. But you have to remember the R8 is dual pixel. Oh, so autofocus.
every pixel's a focus point.
Every pixel's a focus point. That's right.
Yep.
4,800 plus.
Canon gets them again.
R8's just looking good, Daniel.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a better camera than I thought it was when it came out.
Yeah, maybe what you care about is frames per second. You're going to go out there and shoot some JPEGs, and you just need to...
shoot some JPEGs.
You just need to hold that button down and let it go. Let go, let God.
I just don't know. I don't know which one is the best on that. Man, the Z5's not standing up all that well in these comparisons, but is it again the R8?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's like 40 frames per second photo, dude. Just whooping it.
Man, I feel like we're turning into Canon shills here.
Maybe a little bit. R8 just competes, Daniel. I mean, it doesn't have like a joystick. It only has one SD card slot.
How are you going to play video games if it doesn't have a joystick?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the Z5 II, which we really care about here, is like it's like 14 frames per second for your burst.
It's not great.
It's better than the A7 IV and the S5 II.
I guess.
And it's got a mechanical shutter, unlike every other Nikon Canon. Canon camera. I just replaced Canon with camera because that's how much I like Canon, Daniel.
Apparently, we've talked about burst shooting before. I feel like for a lot of people, it's really not that important. Like mostly if you're doing, sports action,
sports, that sort of thing. Which in this case, obviously, a professional sports photographer would use a Canon R8.
You think so?
Because it's cheap and there's balls flying everywhere.
Yeah. You just never know when that camera's going to be destroyed. You can buy 5 R8s for the price of one R1.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You just buy one for every lens.
Yeah, perfect.
They're essentially disposable at this point. Maybe that's what I'll buy when I'm in Japan. I don't know.
Just for the trip.
Disposable R8s.
You'll throw it out when you get to the airport.
It'd be cheaper than buying an R1 RX R1 crap. Sony R1 XR
RX1R.
Thank you. RX1R2.
Yeah.
That was hard.
It would be cheaper.
It wouldn't be cheaper.
You could almost buy the R8 and that 16 and 28 lens for the price of a single RX1R.
It's pretty close, Daniel. Yeah. It's pretty close.
Too close for comfort.
I should have put that on this list.
Yep.
That's also a sub $2,000 full frame camera, kind of. Anyway, let me see what else I want to ask you about here. All right, so we talked about which one was cheapest. We talked about the frames per second. Maybe you're a big video guy.
Big video guy.
Big video guy. What if you needed waveforms on that camera?
Man,
some exposure tools.
We know that's the S5 Mark II. Come on. The only one that's going to have, they're going to have the most features there for sure.
But specifically waveforms. The Z5 II has got you covered.
Nice.
Got you with those waveforms.
Well, if you're only going to have one feature, that's probably the one to have.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the R8 might argue that it's false color because you got false color on the R8.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Not on the Z5 II. But
probably not on the S5 either.
You can load a LUT though. You can do the LUT lab and do false color.
Mm-hmm.
The Z5 II has what is the actually this is going to come up later, Daniel. We'll go back to it. It has supposedly a 3000 nit bright EVF. Nikon's like the only one who's advertising brightness for EVF because I think that everyone else knows it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Like, what are you going to do? Wear sunglasses and use your EVF? Actually, that's kind of a reasonable use case.
Like, it actually is. Very true. What is it? It's like, if you're shooting like HDR or whatever, it can be able to have those peak brightnesses, but I don't know. They're like, we're going to start advertising brightness for EVF to make it sound awesome.
It just seems rare that I ever look at a camera and my complaint is that the EVF is too dim.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you ever thought that?
Never. Zero times. Sometimes I say it's too bright.
Yeah.
Hurts my eyeball.
Yeah. Like when you use your Nikon Z5 Mark II.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but maybe you only care about resolution and frame rates. Which one of these cameras do you think competes?
Well, so we're talking about video, I guess.
No, we're talking about EVFs.
Oh, EVFs.
EVFs, frame rate, and resolution.
Sony.
You're right, Daniel.
Definitely Sony.
3.68 at 120 frames per second.
Feels like that's always a spec they like to compete on.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't care about the 120 frames per second and you only need 60, you can pick up an S5 II or Z5 II. Both of those, same resolution.
So the R8 is the loser here?
Oh yeah, it's like 2.6 or 2.34 million dots. Ugh. It's not good.
Terrible.
No, if you need to see the pictures, the R8's not the camera for you.
If you need to see the pictures, then don't.
You mean you're gonna be capturing them so fast?
Yeah, you're gonna be shooting 40 frames per second.
You don't need to see them.
Yeah,
come on, just
spray and pray.
Exactly. Okay, since we're still talking about screens. What if the back screen is the most important screen for you? Maybe you're flipping that thing around.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe some of these don't have flippy screens. We'll get to it. But maybe you're flipping that screen around and you need to see that high resolution monitor right there. Which one of these are you going to go with?
I still bet the A7 IV has the best screen.
You'd be poorly mistaken.
Poorly mistaken.
It is the worst screen.
Oh, that surprises me.
The best screen is the C5 II with 2.1 million dots.
Okay.
It's because it's slightly bigger than the S5 II screen, I think, and that's why you're getting those extra dots.
Yeah.
Otherwise, pretty good back screen. Not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad. If you need to see the pictures, Z5 II. If you don't need to see the pictures, R8.
I've said this many times in the show, but I do think that having a good back screen is important. And I think that sometimes on cameras, they cheap out on that a little bit too much.
Especially on cheap cameras. Come on.
Yeah, like a cheap camera is the kind of thing somebody's maybe more inclined to use the screen rather than EVF.
You can buy $100 Android phones that have better screens.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to cheap out on.
Yeah. Screens are so cheap. They just put them on everything now.
Yep. Because think about how many people take pictures and you know, they look at it and enjoy it, or they show it to, you know, whoever they're with, and like that screen could be like one of the main places people see the pictures they take. I know it sounds crazy, but like it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, or like just when you're previewing photos and maybe you're going to delete things off the camera before you load it in, and you're just like, oh, that doesn't look good. It could be a good picture.
I just remember that from the XT30. It was like every picture I looked at on that back screen, I thought looked bad, and then I'd put them on the computer and be like, oh, these are actually really good.
So maybe keep that in mind when you're thinking about which of these is the best $1,500, $2,000 camera. Okay, maybe you're shooting external video. Maybe you need an HDMI port on this camera. We all know what's important about HDMI ports.
Do we?
That they're full size.
I was going to say that they exist.
And that they exist. Which of these puppies would you pick if you needed a full-size HDMI port?
S5 Mark II.
That's a good call.
Yep.
It's a very good call. The A7 IV has a full-size HDMI port.
I'm actually pretty surprised.
The other ones, not so much.
Because the A7 III, I don't think had a full size.
Did not. But the A7 IV does.
Interesting.
Z5 II? No. Micro.
That's a shortcoming for sure.
Quite a bit. I was a bit surprised that they didn't go full.
Yeah, yeah. And the R8 also does not?
No. Of course not.
Of course not.
Ugh, bleh. Okay, all right. What if custom modes are your thing? Which of these do you think has the most custom modes?
Man. I don't feel like Canon ever goes too far with those. Sony, I just can't figure out their menus. So whether they did or not, I would never have any hope of actually being able to set them. Panasonic is okay on custom modes, but like, I mean, there's no like C7 like there's on a Fuji. So
that's what I'm saying. I should have put the Fuji X-H2S on this, man.
Yeah, probably.
Just wiped the floor.
Well, I think I'm gonna guess the Nikon.
It's actually 3 C1, C2, C3 for the Z5 II, the A7 IV, and the S5 II.
Okay, so that's
and I don't know enough about how those menus and custom things change so that you can like add more.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna assume that it's probably just the Sony.
Yeah, sounds like it.
All right, we talked about focus points. What if you need to shoot 120? Maybe you need to shoot like video? 4K 120 video.
I'm gonna say R8.
You're actually just out of luck. You have to go buy an XH2S.
No, okay.
Yeah, so
none of them can do that.
No.
I guess
not gonna be a thing.
Yeah, full frame cameras, like that's asking a lot.
It is asking a lot, but maybe you're okay with shooting 1080. Maybe you can shoot 1080 120.
Probably all of them can do that.
Yeah, that's true.
However, it's probably terrible, but they can probably all do it.
The R8 can shoot 180. Maybe 240 is not. You need a little more, but not quite there.
Just a little bit more.
180 frames per second.
Yeah, I remember my GH5. Back in the day, that could shoot 180 frames per second.
Your XH2S can shoot 240 frames per second.
Yeah, it looks terrible, but you can do it.
You sure can. That GH5 with the VBR 180.
That also looked terrible.
Yeah, it did. Sure did. Okay, maybe what you need to do is shoot in low light. You need to get that ISO fully extended.
Fully extended.
Which one of these cameras do you think has the highest fully extended ISO? We're talking more than base. Like you hit 102, 400 or whatever it is, and you just got to keep going.
So I'm going to guess the Sony, but I do want to clarify my answer that the Sony has the highest megapixel sensor, so it may not actually be the best in low light, but I bet its ISO goes the highest.
Surprisingly, it goes the lowest. from what I could tell. I probably have the wrong information. I'd be shocked if you couldn't go to 204-800 on an A7 IV, but in my very quick filling out of this spreadsheet, I wrote down 102-400.
Maybe they left that out because it's a pro feature.
Maybe. Well, the Z5 II and the S5 II, because they're the same sensor, you can go to 204-800.
Okay.
And so can the R8 device, obviously.
Well, and like I said, I bet that those other cameras are going to be, like any of the other three should be slightly better in low light because they have fewer pixels. Same size sensor, fewer pixels.
Yep, true. All right. We already discussed that most of these cameras can shoot 4K oversampled.
Yep.
Maybe you like doing an APS-C crop-free video. Maybe sometimes you punch in.
Yeah. Sometimes you do.
Maybe sometimes you want to be able to do something in between punching in.
Oh, like a hybrid zoom situation.
Do like a hybrid zoom, but maybe what you want out of that hybrid zoom is no loss in resolution because it's just going to change the amount of pixels that it's downsampling.
Oh.
So maybe it's 6K downsampled on the far end, and then you keep zooming in until you get to 4K 1:1. Maybe that's what you want out of it. Which of these cameras do you think can do that?
I'm going to guess that's a Panasonic feature.
I believe it is a Panasonic feature.
Yep.
Also, Z5 II feature.
Interesting.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
I mean, sure seems like this Nikon Z5 II is just an S5 II that can shoot RAW.
Kind of seems like it.
Yep. Interesting.
Yep.
Maybe if you don't need open gate, maybe the Nikon's a better choice.
Don't need open gate, and you don't want that superior IBIS, and you don't want all the video assist features.
I mean, if you're only looking at specs, which we know that's the only thing that matters in this case. The Z5 II has 2 more steps of stabilization compared to the S5 II.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical because I can hear the specs.
It's got 2 more stops, Daniel.
You're moving your hands back and forth like a very wobbly camera.
Maybe when we're talking about stabilization, what really matters to you is which part of the sensor it's stabilizing around.
I don't know.
Maybe it's not always the center. Maybe instead of modulating the movement of the sensor around with all those axes, you want to modulate it around the top corner because that's where your focus point is.
I do remember that feature.
That's a Nikon feature. Yeah. I'm just saying, maybe the S5 II has better stabilization. Maybe the Nikon Z5 II.
I will believe it when I see it. I feel like nobody has managed to beat Panasonic on IBIS, and especially when it comes to things like panning shots. That's the shortcoming I see.
That's where the pan comes from in Panasonic.
Yeah, there you go. That's the shortcoming I see with stuff like the XH2S. I feel like the handheld, like trying to hold a steady shot IBIS on the XH2S is fine, but if you try and pan, across
that natural
move the camera,
it just
doesn't look good at all. And meanwhile on the Panasonic, it's worked perfectly. And that's what I feel like nobody else has managed to match.
I haven't seen enough out of this S5 II yet to say, or Z5 II.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe. I don't know. It just seems like if you don't need open gate or recording to an SSD, sure feels like the Nikon.
Don't need that full size HDMI port.
Maybe you don't need a full size HDMI port. Okay. What if you're like a team tilty screen? What if you're really on team tilty screen and you team flippy screen? You don't want any part of that. You know that the way that you're behind the camera, so you need that screen to tilt. And if it flips out, now it's like all the way over here. You're knocking it all over the place. It's not centered behind you.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to all I need to do is tilt it down. I'm using the camera. And now it's over here on the left.
Yeah, this sounds terrible.
What's going on?
Who would want that? Who would ever want that?
I mean, sure, maybe I'm in front of the camera 10% of the time. The other 90% I'm behind the camera. Why do I want the screen all the way over there? Maybe you're on team tilted screen. Which of these cameras would you pick?
I'm guessing the Nikon.
None of them. They're all flippy screens. Yeah. It's terrible.
And they're not even the fancy one now where like the S1R2 and the new Sony stuff where you can do all of that. It's only a normal flip screen.
Once the A7 V comes out, that'll be solved. Until then, don't buy any of these cameras.
Isn't the A7 V already out?
No. We're waiting on that one.
We're waiting on
Remember?
That. Yeah.
Remember that whole conversation we had whenever we were talking about the...
I forgot. I got confused again because of the A7R5.
Which cameras were we talking about? the Canon ZV1?
Yeah.
Anyways, it's not a ZV1. That's a Sony camera. Okay. Maybe weight is the most important thing to you. Which of these cameras do you think is the lightest? Also, or maybe it's stabilization. Maybe you care about the heaviest camera. I don't know. I don't know what your preferences are.
All right, lightest camera, A7 IV.
It's actually the R8 because they took all the features out. It's really stripped down.
Yeah. They like left the shutter button off or something.
Yep. I mean,
no,
I don't even know.
Joystick. The joystick's the heaviest part.
Yeah. I don't even know if it has a shutter.
Yep.
I mean,
who knows?
was missing a card.
Yep. Good point.
The Z5 II is 700 grams.
How does that compare to the others?
In between. The A7 IV is like 744. The S5 II is 658.
Okay.
They're all kind of in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
All, less than 2 pounds, more than 1 pound.
What's the R8?
Like 461.
What?
It's like half the weight, man.
Man, that kind of makes me suspicious. It makes me wonder: is it made? Is the casing like as durable? Like what?
Oh no, it feels.
It's got to be plastic.
It feels disposable.
It's like a cardboard case, like those old disposable film cameras.
Mm-hmm. All right, okay. So maybe in this situation, like you need the full frame. You're just in that world, but you miss Fuji. And you're like, I wish I could like have an almost classic chrome look. Like maybe I could make a classic chrome like LUT or something, or like a picture profile. I just load it onto my camera, and you need fake film simulations to just emulate that Fuji experience. Which of these are you going to pick?
So first off, I think any film simulation is sort of by definition a fake film simulation because it's not film.
Well, Daniel, good job defining the word simulation.
I'm gonna say so. I know, obviously.
Wait, this isn't real.
The S5 II, I know, has the LUT lab, but I think Nikon does have a very similar feature. So I think that those two are fairly even on that point.
I believe it's called picture control, and you would be right.
Yep.
I mean, it sure feels like whenever you buy the Z5 II or the S5 II, you're not really losing anything.
I mean, I think you're losing some things, but they're surprisingly similar cameras.
They have the same sensor.
They do. They have a different lens mount.
That's true. They do have a different lens mount.
Honestly, that might be the biggest reason to pick one over the other.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's open gate. Maybe it's the autofocus system. Maybe it's the superior IBIS. Which one is that? Who knows?
Total toss-up.
Total toss-up. So yeah, that's my game, Daniel. There's some more Z5 II stuff we have to talk about. But based upon this, which of these 4 cameras are you going to pick?
Man, you know which one I'm going to pick. You know I'm all about that Panasonic life. But honestly, I'd be tempted on the R8 just because I feel like you get a lot of camera for your money and the sensor seems like it's just really good. Like, yeah, you lose out on some of those other things, but I don't know. The R8 seems pretty appealing.
If you only need the camera, like you're never going to plug a monitor into it. Mm-hmm. You don't need RAW or anything like that. And you just need to be able to capture maybe you need some 4K 60 here and there. You need some fast frames per second. And it's like you're not like prosumer. It's more hobby. You're not a professional. You don't need backup cards or anything like that. The R8 is such a good deal.
Yeah.
Like, it is a great entry-level full frame camera. But it feels like if you are going to need some more pro features, or if you're going to need IBIS, for instance, R8 just doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Like
if it's totally missing IBIS, then yeah, that's a factor.
Yeah, like if you need stabilization, if you want maybe, I don't know if it has more dynamic range, but like you want to be able to record out to HDMI, or you need waveforms, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Z5 II and the S5 II are kind of pretty appealing over the R8 for some of those features, the dual card slots, that sort of thing. I think that the A7 IV wants to be upmarket from those, especially based upon its price. Yeah. But it just, unless it's resolution, it kind of just either matches or doesn't compete with these cameras.
I don't think I think that Sony really needs to release that A7 V. I think the A7 IV is just a little too old, and I think maybe the only reason to consider it is if you want to be in Sony's ecosystem for other reasons. Like,
so I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the A7C II is it an A7 IV in a different body, or is it an A7 III?
I don't think it's an A7 III. Like, I think it has the 10-bit color.
I believe it does have the 10-bit color. It is 33 megapixels, so it should be basically the same as A7 IV.
I mean, I don't remember what they left out. They may have left some things out.
So I think that what's going to happen here is, they kept selling, like they still sell the A7 III. Like you can still buy that stinking camera. And that's kind of like
the Apple strategy. Just keep selling the old stuff until people literally refuse to buy it.
They still sell like the 6400, man. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But Canon doesn't really, not Canon, Sony doesn't really have like in that sub $2,000 camera bracket really anymore. I think the A7C II is that camera, with the intent that when the A7 IV is replaced, ideally this year, then that one kind of goes away. The A7 V is now your $2,500 camera that competes with the R6 II, the R6 III, R6 II, and the Z6 III.
Yeah,
it'll be like in that world. And then this comparison really is going to be more of like the A7 II C2, which I should have probably picked instead of the A7 IV.
Well, honestly, though, the A7 C2 right now on B&H is $2,000, and that's actually like $200 instant savings over MSRP.
Interesting.
So it's not like I would say Sony doesn't really compete in this range that we've been talking. A little bit too high.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was 1,700. I didn't realize it was 2,000 or 2,200. So yeah, Sony basically just doesn't have a full frame camera in the sub 2,000 market. Yeah. They've kind of just moved on from that, which is interesting. I guess they'd prefer you buy like an A6700 or something.
I guess so. Yeah,
it's interesting. I would expect Sony to kind of compete here, because it seemed like a lot of these cameras were $2,000 cameras. It was like the Z6s and the R6s and the A7s, and then Sony and Canon moved those up market and then introduced a lower level or moved their lower level up market, and then Sony just didn't have anything. It doesn't have anything, or never hasn't had any full frame cameras under the A7 line.
Yeah, it is weird.
It's interesting. So we all picked the Z5 II because it's an incredible camera.
I mean, it seems pretty good. I think, I really like the S5 II. I mean, Panasonic jokes aside, I think that camera offers a really good value for the money. Like before this, I would have felt like if somebody wanted a full frame camera, it's kind of hard to go wrong with that. And it seems like the Z5 Mark II, matches up pretty well. Like, I mean, if you were more interested in Nikon's lens ecosystem, maybe like it'd be a pretty easy sell to say, get the Z5 Mark II.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny to me how much difference time and processor and manufacturer make to some of these cameras. Like in some of the photo editing that we've done, I've edited a good chunk of like A7 III photos, and like, I honestly don't really love the photos out of the camera. I don't know why I'm so unimpressed by the A7 III. I know it's an older camera, but it was like the camera for the longest time. And for some reason, I'm just not impressed with it. Whereas like the S5 II, those photos look great.
I think
But it's the same sensor.
Yeah, I think technology's just moved on from the A7 III. Like we use the ones for broadcasts, fairly often. And like we see limitations there in terms of like what it can do. Just in general, like it feels like it was good 5 years ago. Was it even out 5 years ago?
I think it was more than that. I think it came out in 2017.
Yeah. So when it was new, I think it was really good. But the newer stuff, like especially 10-bit color for video, like the newer stuff's just better.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I have a few things to run over here on the Z5 II that we didn't cover in my game, and then maybe we get out of here.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we talked about how it's basically the exact same as the ZF. I don't think the ZF shoots internal RAW. So if you need internal RAW, or you don't want that super cool classic look, the Z5 II is going to be a little better and cheaper. It's like $200 or $300 cheaper.
Nice.
We already talked about how I thought this was going to be what the Z6 III would be. Like honestly, if this was the Z6 III, I'd be like, wow, what a great camera for $2,500. Instead, it's like $1,700.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's super cool.
You don't see that much now. It seems like cameras are just getting more and more expensive. So it's neat that they kind of like brought really good features down to a lower price. Yeah,
and one of those features being the XP 7 processor. The fact that they brought the processor from their highest end flagship all the way down to this is awesome.
Kind of makes you think maybe there would be some firmware updates for it too.
Yeah, probably. Nikon's been pretty good about firmware updates recently. I think that, XP 8 and the Z9 II are on the horizon, but I don't know if it's probably not a this year thing. I don't know. I think this is like finalizes the line of the cameras that they've been pushing for.
Yeah.
Like from the Z9 all the way down to this, I think this is like the complete line. The only thing they didn't release is the Z7 Mark III. I don't know if they're going to.
I think we've talked about that. I don't know if there's really a spot for it anymore.
No, not really, because the Z8 is resolution and speed. It's like if you needed resolution at a cheaper price, maybe something that's not stacked, backside illuminated, that's like more than 50 megapixels, more than 40 megapixels, that could be a spot for it. But I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It seems like between the Z6 Mark III and the Z8, like there's not a lot of room there.
Yeah, and like you can still get a decent deal on a Z7 II. Like it's a good camera, but anyway, we talked about the improved autofocus, the brightness of the screen. We talked about it being like the only camera that Nikon sells with a mechanical shutter.
Interesting.
They added a linear focus throw adjustment.
Oh, okay.
So for your lenses that are focused by wire, you can adjust how much throw that it has.
That's a good feature.
There was like a internal lag issue with video where just like if you're shooting in video, just the refresh rate or like the time that it took for the back screen to reproduce on the Z5 was really, really slow. That's gotten significantly better with the Z5 II. It can only record 1080p internally when it's doing raw external. So if you want proxies or only you're stuck with HD proxies.
Probably okay. If you're shooting raw, like I think that's probably
if
fine.
You're doing N-Log and you have a monitor attached, you don't get any view assists over HDMI. That's kind of a bummer.
Isn't the in the Fuji the same way? I think the XH2S
it actually is the same way.
I remember being surprised and a little annoyed by that.
Definitely.
Whenever I first used the XH2S, but I mean, realistically, if you have a monitor, you can load the LUT anyway, so it's not the big video.
Come on, guys.
Yeah,
come on.
It does feel like an artificial limitation.
Little bit. The for your two ISOs on this, it's 6400 and 800 are your two base ISOs. And then they added a feature where if you hold the white balance button, it brings up the custom white balance. And you can just like snap and take your white balance.
Oh, that's cool.
I kind of wish that was on more cameras.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think we talked about the raw issue already. The only other issue that I saw reported, I think this one was reported by Gerald. Whenever you are recording video, it took away the record limits, but it is recording so like if you're recording variable bitrate type video, like if you shoot in NRAW, it's constant bitrate. So like you don't have any issues with the predicted time remaining. But if you're shooting in a mode that has a variable bitrate, like it depends based upon the compression, it does a terrible job at assessing how much space you have left on your card.
Oh,
and
weird.
So it'll say like, oh, you have this much space, and you start recording, and you can record to the point where all that space is full. You stop recording, and then it'll be like, now you have double the space still remaining.
Oh,
like,
weird.
You recorded 32 gigs, and now you have 32 left.
That really sounds like just a software bug.
Yeah, like they're not doing a good job at predicting or live updating the amount of space left whenever you're doing VBR encoding. And it seems like that's something they could fix in firmware, but right now that was like kind of a problem that got reported.
Yeah, that's weird.
So other than the raw and like that recording, I feel like across the board, this is a really, really interesting camera. Like if you don't need the fastest speed, there's not really a reason to buy the Z6 III over this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the reason though, is if you want that partially stacked sensor.
Yeah. And like I get it. There's often reason why you might want to make the jump to a stacked sensor, but I think that this is a really cool camera for Nikon to come out with.
Yeah.
The price is extremely competitive. It is just cuts right in under there to compete with the Lumix S5 II. And I think it competes extremely well with the S5 II. Yeah. There's a few reasons why you might pick the same Panasonic over it, mostly related to video. But if you're like more photo focused, the Nikon has almost all the same video chops. A few things not quite, but like it's going to be a Nikon, so it's like good photos, really good RAWs, and then you have the whole, the Z lineup of lenses.
Yeah, well, and I think the lens lineup's important too, because the Z8 and the Z9 are really good cameras, and so I could see an argument where like, you get into a Z5 Mark II, and then you're in Nikon's system, buying their lenses, and you have really reasonable upgrade options that are still really good cameras, really current. And I mean, yeah, I almost think like between this camera and the S5 II, it really does kind of come down to which manufacturer and lens ecosystem do you want to be in.
Do you want to be able to buy Tamron lenses or Sigma lenses?
There you go.
Yeah, the upward mobility thing is, I think, really important when trying to pick a lens ecosystem if you're not in either of these systems. And, until the S1R Mark II came out, it was kind of like there was no upward mobility for Lumix. I think the S1R Mark II does make a very interesting difference in the calculation. It's still not a very fast sensor compared to the things that Nikon's coming out.
I think the Z8 might be a more exciting camera, but if you already have a lot of Panasonic stuff, the S1R Mark II could be is still a good upgrade path.
I like this one, R Mark II, a lot. I think that it's very interesting from like a hybrid video, high resolution photo combo perspective, like more interesting than something like an A7 V or whatever.
Yeah.
And the R8 way more expensive, right?
Z8,
sorry. The Z8 way more expensive, faster, still kind of an interesting comparison. It seems like wildlife, sports, anything where you need faster read speeds off the sensor, the Nikon makes more sense.
Yeah.
If you prefer the video specs, Nikon's red, right? So it's like that's becoming less and less of Panasonic's win here. But I think that like the Panasonic is still pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yep.
Good.
Plus, if you invest in L mount, you can just buy a Pixis.
There you go. Perfect. But yeah, I think it's a good release from Nikon. Like I would recommend this camera to people if they, I want to spend money on a full frame camera. What should I get? Like this would be, I think this is like immediately on the short list.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, any of the cameras that we talked about today are probably in that range, but really more the R8, the S5 II and the Z5 II.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I'm curious about is, maybe, I guess like back when you bought the X-T3, that was when you were kind of buying a camera, in this range. Do you think any of these and potentially which would have tempted you the most?
I would have watched and listened to every review on all of these cameras. I had a real hard time whenever I was going through that.
You almost bought an A7 III.
I got so close to buying an A7 III, and honestly, I bought the X-T3 one because of the controls just appealed to me way more from like a photo standpoint. It was a little cheaper, but mostly it was like the video was just that much better. Like you had like higher megabits and you had more modes and capabilities, and you could shoot in like 4K 60 and stuff that like you just couldn't do with the A7 III. And it just kind of won me over as far as feature to price.
Yeah.
But if I was coming back to it now, like I was leaving my entry level, micro four third camera that I spent $300 on 2 years before. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. Cause like I was ready to buy that Sony. I was like, I'm just going to buy an A7 III. And then I didn't. I would probably end up buying cause like I wouldn't buy necessarily an X-T5 compared to all these. I love my X-T5, but if I was like comparing these, the video specs on the X-T5 just don't quite compete.
Yeah.
Maybe the XH2 is more interesting, but it's also more expensive.
Yeah. Smaller sensor, more expensive.
Yeah, it would be really tough. It would be really, really tough. I would probably land on an S5 II, honestly. I would probably end up in a Lumix ecosystem if this was my choice.
I still feel like the Lumix is maybe like slightly more video oriented.
Yeah, for sure. And mostly also that, now I'm a huge Nikon person, and if it was me today, I'd absolutely buy the Nikon. But if it was me back when I was buying my X-T3 and it was this series of cameras, at that time, Nikon's your dad's camera.
Yeah. Nikon really turned it around the last few years.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't want my daddy's camera.
That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, and if you liked it, tell a friend so they can check it out too. You can find out more about the show at www.cameragearpodcast.com, and you can find us on Twitter @CameraGearPod. We'll be back with more next week.